All right, so in this video, I'm going to explain to you how you can master closing for your coaching business so that when you hop on calls, you have a pretty high chance of closing at 30 plus percent close rate. So why is this important? Well, is because if you can squeeze as much as possible from the calls that are in your calendar, the better it's going to be for you, right? So you can make your ads more profitable and put more back to the ads. But also, there's another intellectual or more emotional component of closing is knowing that you did everything you could have done on that call to close that person, right? Because ultimately we're closing to change people's lives, not closing just to make money. And because of that, you have a clear responsibility to close somebody. And if you don't, well, it's your fault, right? You need to do it. The only reason why somebody might not close is because one, you can't help them, or two, the money aspect of it is tight right now, and they can't invest. Literally, they don't have money, and they don't have ways to get money. But even that, there's workarounds, and we can talk about that too. So today, I'm going to do that because I think it's super important for coaches to master closing. And the reason why I'm qualified for this is because I personally have closed $1 million for different coaching businesses as well as for my own business. And I've taken at this point over 5,000 calls, coaching offers and agency offers. And so probably more at this point, you kind of stop counting, but I think I have one or two things. But most importantly, I had amazing mentors that taught me, people like, Cole Gordon, people like Paulo Flores, people like Taylor Welch, all these people that, really taught me how to, Eli Wild, how to really approach closing in a way that is not salesy and actually gets people to want to be closed. Right. So yeah, let's get straight into it. So I'm going to share the whiteboard here so it makes it easier. And basically, there are three main phases that you have to master in order to get to, let's say, 65-75% closing rate. And it's called like the cigarette analogy. I'll probably have to find a better name for that eventually. But I was taught this by my previous mentor, Paulo Flores. And he trains closers now, and he's a beast. And he's taught me a lot of the things that I know right now. And he basically explained it to me this way. Okay. So this is your closing rate, right? Let's say this is 0% on this side, 0% closing rate. And this side is 100% closing rate, right? 100% and 0%. And the goal, of course, is to have as high of a closing rate as possible, right? Now, let's start with the part that it's like, not necessarily something we need to work on regardless. This is the 25% that will never close. These people, they shouldn't be on the call. They're on the call because, there's always inefficiencies in systems, and there's people are never going to be perfect, right? But it's about 25%, more or less. These are the people that you're never going to close, right? So they call it unclosable. Unclosable. Okay. So you don't have to worry about this. You don't need to have 100% close rate. Like, I wouldn't cancel enough calls for you to get to 100% close rate, because then you're going to be losing a lot of people that seem unclosable, but they're actually closable, which is the gray zone. We'll talk about it in a bit. But yeah, so don't worry about this 25%. Now, there's another funny kind of category, which is the 5% here. And hopefully this is kind of like, accurate to some extent in terms of the sizes, if it's proportional. But this is the 5%. Okay. This is the monkey closes. Okay. The reason why we call it the monkey closes is because if you put a monkey in front of this person, they would still close. Okay. It's basically just a checkout close. The person is ready. The marketing was amazing to nurture them, and now they're ready to go. Okay. Ideally, you have more of those, but they're not that common, right? So, you have to kind of get better with the others in order to hit your numbers and close more. So now this is where it gets interesting, right? The next 20%, let's put it here. This 20% is going to be the framework, right? Stage one, which is framework. And the reason why this is exciting, actually, let's put this inside here. So stage one is framework. This is where people go wrong. Like they try to work on things like objection handling, or high level like closing loops and stuff like that. But the thing is that if you don't master the framework, like a good framework is going to give you the ability to just close somebody just by asking the right questions, right? It's going to prevent objections just by asking certain questions. And that allows you to just have a super high close rate already. As you can see, just by doing these two, you're going to have 25% closing rate, which is already, quite good for most offers, as a start. So if you just focus on that first, right? So what are the things you need to focus on in the framework, right? Learn the questions, learn the questions. Two is so learn the questions is the first thing. Second thing is get the right answers, and then adapt the framework as needed. As needed. What does this mean, right? Basically, first is just ask the questions as they are. Just do that. Second is just because you're asking questions, that doesn't mean you're getting the right answers, right? Especially in certain parts of the call. So what you need to do is actually get the right answer. So if you don't get the right answer, you need to re-ask the question in a way that doesn't annoy the prospect and shows them why you need the answer, because it's to help them, right? And then the third thing is to adapt the framework as needed, which is framework flexibility. And it's basically just removing questions when you don't need it, when they've already answered, or changing the order a little bit if the person is going more towards goal instead of problem, and things like that, right? So this is how you master that. Now this is how you get to 25% close rate. The second stage is the it's in a way it's together, but I'll divide it just to make it more interesting. And it's about half for the most part. So this second stage is called energy. Okay. And this was kind of, in a way, a big part of it, at least in this space, was popularized by Eli Wild, which is basically your state, your leadership. Like, how are you showing up in the call has a huge effect on the outcome. Like, especially when you start taking a lot of calls, you start taking things for granted and you don't show up with the same excitement and then the same willingness to serve the person on the call as you did in the beginning, because it's like the thousandth time you're doing. But this is super important because people need to, regard, like, it's the first time they're talking to you, right? So they don't know all the other calls you've had. They only know the experience talking to you right now. So because of that, you need to show up in a way that makes them excited to be talking to you and actually willing to kind of continue talking to you and give you the right answers, right? Like, if you're not building rapport, if you're not asking intelligent and questions, if you're not showing up with kindness and from the right place, right? The right where from, not what you say, not how you say it, not why you're saying it, but like the right where from. Are you just trying to help them, or are you just trying to get the call done or just close them, right? And if you do that, if you focus on the right energy, you're going to notice a shift on your calls. You're going to get excited about it again, and people are going to be more attracted towards you. They're going to start asking things like, what was your experience, right? Like, what was, like, how did this work for you? They're going to ask, they're going to be interested in you as a person, not just in you as the closer for yourself, right? For your own coaching business. So that's step number 2. Okay. So the things you want to work on is your where from, right? Where from, your leadership, right? Uh, Especially in your own life, right? You can lead others if your life is a mess. Just, you can't, because you can't ask of people to challenge themselves if you're not challenging yourself, right? To become better. And then ultimately, it's just like rapport. That's really it, and trust, right? And this is kind of built by the other two, but that's the goal, is building rapport and trust. Not because we just want to shove product down their throat, but it's because we know it's the best thing for them. But they need to trust us, right? They need to believe that we're the best and we care about them. We need to show that, not tell them. We need to show that with our energy, right? And so this will get you about another 20% of the way, which puts us at 45. I would say even, yeah, I'd say even like about 25%, right? Which will get us to 50%. Okay, this will get us to 50% closing rate. Now, this is assuming everything else, right? You're canceling enough calls. You're only getting people that are, better fits into the calls and things like that. The numbers can vary, but this is what you can expect in the highly optimized closing process or sales process. Okay, that's phase 2. Now, phase 3 is the one that people most focus on in the beginning, which I don't recommend, which is objection handling and pre-handling. Okay, don't get me wrong, this is super important. But how can you expect to get to the end of the call? Somebody is trying to get somebody to close, and you drop the price, and then they give you, oh, let me think about it, and then you don't. But the reason why they're doing that is because they don't trust you, right? You didn't show up with the right energy. You didn't ask the right questions to get them to really feel the need to change. Like, how can you expect to solve that objection? Like, that's not an objection handling problem. That's a framework problem or an energy problem. Now, Could you save it at that point and do some objection handling, right? Jedi tricks in order to get them to close? You could, but that's not the biggest constraint. Like you're always going to face that more objections because you're not doing the framework and energy correctly. So again, before you move on to the next stages, work on framework and then work on energy and then go on to objection handling. Still important, right? But definitely advanced. This is going to get you another at this stage, yeah, another 25%. Okay. Theoretically, it's going to take you to 75% close rate. You can probably expect more in most inefficient systems out there, like I'd say between 40 and 60 at the most, right? Close rate, if you really, really master this. And depending on the offer, some offers you can never get to 60% because they're like B2C, very high volume stuff. But regardless, you're going to maximize, which is what matters. And you're going to know that you're confident that it's not you, right? It's like you've handled it, right? You know how to close. Now it's, just other things in the business that have to grow. So what do you want to focus on this, right? You want to have a clear objection handling framework. What do I mean by this? Well, most people, the way they do objection handling is they say, oh, if the prospect says this, you should say that. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad way. Like a lot of people have made careers at teaching that. So, I'm not going to bash on that. But I after testing a bunch of different things, I personally found that it's better just to stay organized and instead find a process that you can rely on every single time, regardless of what they say, right? You always have something to say, not as a direct response. So it seems reactive, but instead a funnel, right, that you push people through in order to get the solution of the problem, right? So because a lot of people have a framework, right, for the call where they get the right questions, they get the right answers, they follow a specific process, they don't let the person deviate and control the process. But then when it gets to objection handling, they start like riffing, right, and telling stories in the moment, or going back to the call, but didn't you say this, or blah blah. That all that stuff can work, but the most important thing is that those are all reframes, and they should come at the right moment, the right time, and ultimately is to solve the right thing, right? So my process is called the FIRE method, which is find the real objection, isolate to make sure there's nothing else, reframe the objection, and then end the loop by asking closing question, right? And that allows you to kind of control things, right? And you can always start over the loop or go back a step, and has that type of flexibility. But you need some kind of framework, right? The second thing, the second process is you want to start now working on pre-handling. Okay. What that means is when people give signals of objections, right? Even before price drop, right? Things like, oh, I don't know about the money, or I would have to talk to my partner. Like even before you drop the price, you want to start pre-handling those things before the price drop so that it's a lot more organized at the end and feels a lot easier and a lot smoother, right? That's what's called pre-handling, right? Is when objections pop up beforehand. Like, oh, I've tried something else similar to this before. Like, how is this different? Right? Well, I don't see how this is different. And then, technically you could just ignore that and continue the call, but good luck with that. Like that's going to be a door that is open, right, for the end of the call, if you don't solve it. And then the third one, which is something that people don't actually work on for the most part, is objection prevention. Right. So this is tied to the framework, as I mentioned, right? If you ask the right questions, you're going to have people starting to tell you the right things and reframing themselves so that doesn't even show up as an objection at the end. A good framework will do that for you. It will prevent before it even needs to be preventable. But there's also things you can spot that the framework will not completely solve that will allow you to just bring that up on the spot and solve it right there, or at least make sure that they see it the way you see it, right? Which is typically the healthier way because you've done a lot of these calls, right? So you know how to look at problems. For example, let's say if somebody says, they've tried something in the past and it didn't work out. Okay. I mean, most closers would be like, okay, I mean, didn't work out. That's fine. An opportunity to close, right? That's okay, right? But think about this. If that didn't work out, one, you don't know why it didn't work out, right? It could have been them, their fault. They maybe could have been like not consistent, right, with the process. That's why it didn't work out. Or maybe they didn't follow directions, right? Or maybe they bought into a scam and now they're afraid of scams, right? They're afraid of buying something new because they think a lot of things could be scams out there, which they are some, right? But it's not necessarily the healthiest way to look at it. Like you just need to objectively look at something and see if it's a scam or not just assume everything is a scam and be hyper skeptical. So because of that, you want to bring that up. It's like, how do you mean by like it didn't work out? Like, what was the reason, right? And you go down a funnel where it basically brings the issue up So now moving forward, let's say it's about, that they were not consistent. Now you want to ask them like, okay, so what's different about now? What's going to make you consistent now versus, when you were trying that? And you're going to put them on the spot, and you're going to have to think of an answer that is satisfactory, right? And just by doing that, they will be aware, one, of why it didn't work out, and two, now that they want to be different, and you can tie them into that identity right there and then, right? And that's going to make it super powerful, because then you're not even preventing, like, you're just asking questions, and you're, curious about, ultimately, curiosity, right? Which is actually another thing I want to add here, which is curiosity, right? Just genuine curiosity. um Naturally, you're just going to be able to have those, in a curious way, like, prevent even any objection from popping up, either pre-price drop or post-price drop. Really, it's really the most beautiful thing, because then it makes your process so clean. You get to the end, you have maybe one or two objections left, but it's like super simple because you already handled the bulk of it before, and then you don't have to have an endless follow-up calls, and you can actually close people right there and there. So that's pretty much it for this video. Hope that was helpful. This is how you can master and get your closing rate up to 75%. If you have any questions, let me know. And yeah, good luck with this, and hope your coaching business grows from this. So have a great day, and hope this was helpful.